Sentire Media.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of A New Life in Italy, the podcast where we dive into everything you need to know about living, traveling, and thriving in Italy. I'm your host, Samantha Wilson, and today's episode is one that's very close to my heart, or actually my stomach, and likely yours too. We're talking about Italian cuisine, a global favorite, but with one important twist: how to make sure you're getting the real deal. Now, let's be honest, Italian food has reached every single corner of the globe. And with that fame comes a lot of imitation. You might think you're enjoying authentic pasta or pizza, but the truth is, not everything that's labeled Italian is actually, well, Italian. From supermarket olive oils that aren't what they seem to so-called authentic Italian restaurants that cater more to tourists than local palates, well, it's easy to be fooled. And that's where today's guest comes in. He's someone who has made it his mission to help people from around the world tell the difference between what's genuinely Italian and what's just trying to pass off as Italian. He's built a very popular Instagram channel dedicated to showing people how to spot fake Italian food and find the real stuff, whether you're at your local grocery store or dining in Italy or even just cooking at home. And what I love about his approach is that it's very practical. He's not just giving you big ideas about Italian cuisine. He's providing you with actionable tips that you can use right away. Whether you're trying to pick out the best olive oil, it is season now, or make sure that your pasta that you're buying is authentically Italian, or even to find a very real local restaurant at home or when you're traveling, he's got you covered. So stick around, because by the end of this episode, you'll be armed with the knowledge to eat, cook, and shop like an Italian, no matter where you are in the world. Are you ready? Let's get started. I'm Samantha Wilson, Chief Dream Maker at smartmoveitaly.com, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show where each week I take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to move to Italy, introduce you to some fascinating people, answer your questions, and show you how starting a new life in Bel Paese is possible for you. When I first moved to Italy, I quickly learned that Italian food was so much more than just the dishes themselves. It's a cultural experience. And to my Italian friends, food was very important. And it was always the subject of conversation in one way or another. And it surprised me, and actually it still does, how much everyone knows about their local cuisine, their ingredients, their recipes, their wine. Even the kids know all of this. I remember listening to this little 9-year-old girl rattle off how to make the best pesto. She was only 9, and she was insistent that she could only do this in Liguria because this is where it comes from. And she knew that it was the tradition. It wasn't just because it was famous. It was really the way it was supposed to be done. And Italian food is about tradition. It's about rules. It has methods, and they're highly guarded, highly respected, and even policed. But it wasn't long before I realized that what I had thought of actually Italian food back home wasn't quite the same as what I was tasting and experiencing here. In fact, the difference is staggering. What I didn't know back then, and what I've come to realize here, is that there is a lot of imitation when it comes to Italian cuisine, especially outside of Italy. So whether it's that processed supermarket Parmesan that is a far cry from true Parmigiano here, or restaurants that claim to serve authentic Italian food, like, dipping your bread in a puddle of olive oil and balsamic vinegar. By the way, that is not Italian. Or chicken Alfredo, which also is not Italian. Actually, not to mention the Alfredo sauce, chicken itself is never put together with pasta. But I know it's easy to get caught up in the wrong version of what Italian cuisine is truly all about. And that's really what today's episode is about: how to spot the difference between authentic Italian food and the imitations that are so commonly found outside of Italy and even sometimes here. In Italy, food is deeply tied to tradition, to geography, and it's simple food. Every region has its own specialties, and Italians take a lot of pride in the quality of their ingredients. But if you don't know what to look for, it's easy to be fooled by products that look Italian but don't follow the same quality or authenticity standards. And I know lots of people who've been very disappointed after bringing home what they thought was a traditional Italian ingredient, only to find it didn't live up to the real thing. And that is why I'm so excited about today's guest, Robert Campana. He has this great Instagram channel that you might be following. It's called Stop Italian Sounding, or maybe you listen to his podcast here on Sentieri Media. He is an Italian American and an expert at helping people recognize authentic Italian food. And his Instagram channel has taught thousands of people how to avoid falling into the trap of buying fake or low-quality Italian products. So whether you're trying to shop for Italian ingredients at home or traveling through Italy and want to experience true Italian cuisine, Robert is here to help you make sure that you're getting the real deal. So today I am going to be talking about the difference between real and fake Italian food, what to look for when you're buying Italian products, and how you can enjoy an authentic Italian food experience no matter where you are. And I have a special guest here. So Robert is on the line. Hi, Robert. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Sam? Thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So listen, why don't you just start by introducing yourself and telling people about why you do what you do?
Okay, perfect. So my name is Robert Campana. I am an Italian American. I currently live in the United States, and I am the founder of Stop Italian Sounding. I like to define it a movement, a social media movement that teaches the differences between real Italian food and beverage products compared to Italian sounding products.
Okay.
That's on one end. On the other end, I am an Italian language teacher in a high school. So my entire day is about Italy, Italian language, and Italian culture.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So I know you have a ton of followers, and we're going to be putting your link. And obviously you also have a podcast on Sentieri Media.
Yes.
But what do your kids, I know you said you're a teacher. So what do your students say when you have, all these people following you and you're all over the internet? What do they
I kind
say?
of downplay it at times just to joke around. When I first started the page, it had to be about 4 years ago. It was when I came back I lived in Italy between 2019 and 2020 to get my master's in international business. And 2020 was when the world shut down with COVID.
Right.
But anyway, long story short, after getting the master's and doing research on Italian sounding products, I came back to the United States and opened up this page in 2020. So I guess that you said the question is, what do my students think about it? In the beginning, they thought it was a fake page of me because I didn't have as many followers.
They feel sorry for you.
Yeah, there's like, somebody's taking videos of you or, hacking into your personal stuff and put them online. I'm like, no, that's actually me. That's literally what I'm doing. So they like it. They like when I get invited to go to Italy and visit different productions because that means that I bring back food for them.
Of course.
So they like to put that in practice. And they like to understand and learn about the cultural side of food history, because culture is a driving factor to learn really anything, because Italy has such a strong cultural identity.
It does. And of course, it's all attached to food too. Italians talk
Exactly.
about food or politics. There's the two things that are going on in the piazza.
Exactly. Even calcio as well. We have to.
Oh yes, that's right. Sports, always. That's right, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about food then. That's what I think is really interesting, because I do obviously follow your Instagram, and because I live in Italy, I have learned a lot about food. I realized that I knew nothing about Italian food until I moved here. But so let me explain. So what you're doing is you are trying to help people understand and recognize what is really Italian food, what is authentic Italian food, because as you know, and probably people realize, Italy in itself, in particular, even Tuscany or other parts, are almost brands unto themselves. You put that name on something and it automatically conjures up an idea of a quality especially when it comes to food, because Italian food is famous around the world for being the best food in the world.
Correct.
Of course, my French friends are not going to agree with me.
They're not too happy about that.
They're not too happy about that statement, but it's very true. So
Yes.
from your experience, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about Italian food, especially when it comes to spotting the real deal versus imitations?
So, at least from an American point of view, Italian food typically here is viewed as being just pizza, pasta, meatballs, sauce, specifically things that tend to come from southern Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, there is some truth to that because pizza exists, pasta exists, and meatballs exist. But it's much, much more than that. It's based on a regional level. So, depending on the region or even the city that you visit within Italy, and you probably know better than me because you live there, you get things that are totally different from one town to another. Things at times that those locals may not have even heard of from another city. We were just talking before about the Alps, and I mentioned Valtellina and Bormio in Lombardia. And there's a dish up there called pizzoccheri,
Mm-hmm.
which is a type of pasta made with potatoes, made with local cheese, made with verza, so cabbage,
Mm-hmm.
which is a dish totally unknown if you were to mention that in Sicily, for example.
Right. Yeah. It sounds very northern to me.
So I think that what we have to do is we have to tell the stories of not just dishes, but also products, because products are representative of that specific local identity that many people are very proud of.
Right, right. And because it's not just that it's an authentic Italian product, it's actually the process of making that product that is
Yes,
also so incredibly important to the authenticity of it.
exactly. Absolutely. And I'm thinking of products like, for example, Parmigiano Reggiano tends to be the number one example that I use because it is the most imitated cheese in the world. So it's a cheese that could only be produced in areas within Emilia Romagna and in the province of Mantova, south of the Po River,
Mhm.
um, due to things like history, tradition, production know-how, and terroir. And I think terroir is something very interesting to discuss
Okay.
because terroir, I like to relate it as like a fingerprint
Hmm.
of the territory. So that product is representative specifically of that small territory in terms of, like I just said, tradition, history, and production know-how.
Hmm.
So it is a product that cannot be made anywhere else, not even within Italy. For example, Parmigiano Reggiano can't be made in Sicily, legally speaking, but also because the cows that graze the specific area within Emilia Romagna, they eat that local feed, they produce milk that is influenced from that local feed, and then the cheese is produced. If they were to do that somewhere in Sicily, let's just say, or way up in the Alps, the
Hmm.
cheese would eventually taste different.
Now, do they do that though in Italy? Do they actually take these very well known products and try to manufacture them elsewhere? Or is it really very respected? Are those rules respected here?
In Italy, it is very respected, especially when it comes to D.O.P products or IGP products or D.O.P, OEGP. In
Hmm.
English, it's known as a PDO or PGI products, but within Italy, you'll see the Italian
Yeah.
acronyms. That's quite respected. Now, I'm not here to say that there are no bad apples because there's always bad apples in every bunch with any type of industry.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's respected.
Okay. But obviously, in other places, other parts of the world, when they realize that they can label something and confuse people to think that it is from Italy and it's the real thing, it's the real cheese, then they can package it and disguise it,
Exactly.
and they and really confuse people when they're buying it.
Exactly, exactly. And I guess I should define what the term Italian sounding means. Italian
Hmm.
sounding is a product that induces the consumer to erroneously associate the locally produced product with the Italian one. So to stay on the topic of Parmigiano Reggiano, here in North America, we see labeling such as Parmesan,
Hmm.
which is a direct translation of the word Parmigiano, and that if you look at the logos on that packaging and images, I have Italian flag. I've
Yeah.
even seen sometimes images of Tuscany, the hills of Tuscany,
It-
trying to sell you Parmesan. Like Parmesan
with
has nothing to
Parmesan?
do with Tuscany at all. So,
No,
but
no,
it just
wrong
goes to show
region.
you that the image that people in North America have of Italy are the hills of Tuscany. So they
Hmm.
throw that on there because people could relate to that. And it's quite interesting. In Europe, however, I should say that Parmesan belongs to Parmigiano Reggiano. So the use of the word Parmesan is owned by the Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium only within Europe.
Oh, okay.
In
Okay,
North
so it's like it's
America,
trademarked in a way.
absolutely yes. In North America, instead, it is it's the opposite. So
Right. So anybody
that's
can do it, which makes it a bit difficult because, you know, I
does.
remember before we moved here, every time, because we had been coming to Italy for decades before we moved. And every time we would return back home, we would be seeking out, you know, all of the Italian food and the Italian grocery stores
Yes.
looking for, you know, more of what we were used to. And it was very hard to find. So we'd find these Italian kind of delis. And I was always suspect because I used to think, well, how could it not taste the same as it did when it was in Italy? And of course, we weren't in Italy, so there's something to be said about environment. But
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that I think that probably we were buying things that really weren't real.
It could be the case. It could be because 2 out of every 3 products, at least in the United States, and I'm going to say Canada as well,
Hmm.
2 out of every 3 are considered Italian sounding. So
Really?
it just goes to show you, yeah,
Well, it's a
yes,
huge market, right? I mean,
it is
huge.
enormous. It's enormous.
Do you know how big it is by any chance? Do you know those numbers? Not to put you
I
on the spot.
no, no, yes, yes. So around the world, it is 150 billion euros.
Wow.
I hope I'm not saying the incorrect, or maybe it's 120 billion. It's over 100. Let's just put it like
Over
that.
100 billion. Yeah.
Yes, 100 billion. And of course, that is not possible to recuperate, because Italy is a small country. They can't possibly fulfill the demand of the entire world.
No, no, of
Um,
course.
so that's one reason
No.
why Italian sounding exists, and that says a lot to the, if something's imitated. I guess what's the saying that people say? Imitation is the greatest form of
Flattery.
flattery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know because I mean it's completely deceitful. I know that in Italy there's also they have the government has police in a way, kind of like a policing.
Hmm.
You might know about this too, where they police olive oil, for example, because there's a
Yes.
huge market. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. So I always joke around with my students that if you commit a food crime, the food police are going to come get
A
you.
food crime.
Yes,
That's
yes.
great.
Like I put a pineapple on pizza, for example, and it's funny because in class then we'll have these debates where should you put balsamic vinegar on ice cream, or which I
Mm,
personally love. I know they
of
do that in Modena.
course.
I love it.
In
Or even
Modena, yeah, with strawberries and that
oh my
really, oh
gosh,
my gosh. Okay.
absolutely yes. But yes, the food police do exist. They're called the Carabinieri per la tutela agroalimentare. I believe that's the official name. Don't quote me.
Okay.
But what they do is they ensure the food safety of course, the production of agri-food products within Italy. So to make sure that these consortia or companies and businesses are following the rules.
Okay.
There
Respecting the
are
rules.
exactly there are bad apples. There are bad players in this industry, of course, just like I said before, every industry, and sometimes they catch fake prosciutto coming from Eastern Europe, for example. I think it was
Mm,
last year or the year before that called Diretti, which is the largest agricultural association in
right.
Italy and in Europe. They actually intercepted a lot of incoming fake products
I
from Eastern
remember
Europe.
that. It was
Yes,
all over the news.
yes,
Typical
yes,
Italian news. Yeah, because there's rules and I guess regulations on really all of these main things that people think about, like pasta, the way they make pasta in certain areas, and olive oil and cheese, and even pizza. The real, because I
yes.
think isn't pizza in the south now down in Napoli considered a UNESCO or
Uh,
UNESCO?
UNESCO.
Thanks.
Yes, that's yes. I believe it's l'arte della pizza napoletana. I
Hmm.
believe. So the art of the real Neapolitan pizza.
Yeah, it
Um,
has to be a certain kind of ingredients from a certain place and how it's made, correct?
Correct. Yes,
Yeah,
correct. I don't know the specific ingredients.
yeah.
When it comes to pizza, I'm actually better at eating it than
Uh,
making it. Believe it or
yeah.
not.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm this. Okay. So I want to talk about olive oil a little bit too, because I think
Yes.
that this is one that is really deceiving around the world. And I know it is coming into olive oil season. We were just talking about
Yes.
it today because I can't wait. But tell our listeners about what they should be looking for the best olive oil or real
Oh,
Italian olive oil.
okay. So olive oil is definitely an interesting topic of conversation because it's quite difficult to get good quality olive oil here in the United States. And I remember even living in Italy, I would read the fine print and I would see, olive oil coming from the European Union, but that could mean 10 different countries.
Right.
So when people ask me this question, typically I have them look for olive oil that comes in a dark glass bottle, so light cannot get in
Hmm.
and ruin the quality of the olive oil. Look for olive oil that comes from one specific location. I'm biased to Italy, of course, but if it's Spain, for example, or Greece, one location is very important.
Hmm.
And also make sure that the harvest date is printed somewhere on that bottle, because it shows you that the producer of the olive oil is honest, and
Hmm.
they have no problem telling you when they harvested those olives and produced the olive oil.
Hmm.
Because extra virgin olive oil, which we know is considered the highest quality of olive oil, and that means that the olives are picked and processed into, of course, the olive oil in less than 24 hours, many
Yeah.
cases less than 12 hours. And that's what we want to look for.
Right. The first press. We call it first press here. So,
Correct. Yes.
yeah, because then what'll happen is we'll take our olives to the frantoio and then they'll press them. And you get that thick lime, sort of neon
Yes,
green oil, which is incredible.
it is.
And yeah, and then what happens, we just leave all the paste and everything behind because we don't care about the rest of it. And we take all the oil. And then, of course, the frantoio can take that and then they press it and they sell all of those bits to big factories as well. That then they press them a few more times and mix everything together.
Right, right. So if you really want to look for a high quality olive oil, a lot of times what I tell people here is to look for the red and yellow DOP symbol, so
Hmm.
the PDO in English, or the EGP in Italian, PGI in English,
Yeah.
blue and yellow logo, and that tells me that they follow strict production regulations, and the olive oils come from protected quote unquote areas.
Yes.
That's not to say that you can't get extremely high extra virgin olive oil that's not PDO or PGI, because you absolutely can.
Yeah.
Um, from an American point of view, that's just something easy to look for.
Okay, good. Well, let's talk about other food then. When you're buying Italian products, what are some red flags? Let's talk about the stuff they should be
Hmm.
like paying attention to.
Red flags. So I always start with an exaggerated Italianness of the packaging.
Okay, that's a
If
great
you
one.
if you see Italian flag, you see, like we said before, the rolling hills of Tuscany for Parmigiano Reggiano or Gorgonzola just make no sense.
Yeah.
Exaggerated Italianness, use of Italian words, Italian stereotypes, like I don't know. Sometimes you see things like
Yeah.
Don Peppino, going back to like
Yeah.
a
Chef
mafia
Boyardee.
reference.
Yeah.
Exactly, Chef Boyardee.
Yeah.
Yes, and those are typically the major red flags. Also, here in the United States, there is a difference between made in Italy versus product of Italy.
Okay. What's the difference?
Made in Italy means that the raw materials were simply put together in Italy and then shipped out to foreign markets.
Okay.
So, for example, pasta, you get the raw materials could come from elsewhere in the world, and the company is an Italian company, puts it together and ships it out. Product of Italy
Oh.
instead means that the all of the raw materials were sourced in Italy. The product was put together in Italy and then it was shipped out.
So that's the
And
one you want to look for.
that is the one you want to look for if you indeed do want a real product of Italy.
Okay. That's a really good point because, yeah, well, I guess it just says it. If you really think about the words, it's telling you exactly what it is, but you could
Yes.
easily just be confused. If you add all of those things, if you add that, that packaging that makes it look like Italian, and even, if you don't understand the language, it just looks Italian, and then you have, it's produced or put together in Italy, then
Mhm.
you just assume that it is.
Exactly. Oh yes, absolutely. And the way marketing is done is that they use these big gold letters that says packed in Italy. They're
Yeah.
not lying, because it was packed in Italy. But
Right.
then if you continue reading it, it says, especially for olive oil, product of Italy, Spain, Greece, Morocco,
This
and
is all
and
mixed up.
all
Yeah.
mixed up. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
and I always tell people, my objective is not to close down all of the Italian sounding production around the world. Absolutely not. My objective is just simply to make you aware as to what's real and what's not real. And if you want to buy Italian sounding, go ahead. If you want to buy, authentic Italian products, that's great as well. But
Right.
I think that an informed consumer is a happier one.
So where do you find these? Like, where should somebody go shopping if they want to buy a product, an Italian product? Where's the best place to find them? The real
So
stuff.
the real stuff, okay. So it really depends where you're located. I'm lucky enough to be able to find some things here in New Jersey, at my
Right.
local supermarket, and but a lot of times there'll be specialty stores around areas where there's a high density of Italian Americans, such as New Jersey, such as New York, such as Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Um, And I know even in Canada, there are a lot of places as well, so maybe in Toronto or
Yeah, Little
Montreal.
Italy. Yeah.
Exactly. But unfortunately, in the central states of the United States, it becomes a little more difficult. So at that point, online would be your best bet.
Right.
But that's really it. In
Right.
Italy, on the other hand, and everywhere,
Yeah. I just go to the
everywhere. So
store.
you're very lucky.
I am. I know. Okay, so that's buying products. Let's talk about dining out because this is another thing. And we've been to some restaurants in Canada that are known to be really the best Italian
Hmm.
restaurants in Vancouver. We can't even eat there. It's just horrible what they're doing to their food. So, compared to what really happens here in Italy. So, tell me about for travelers, for example, visiting Italy. I know you probably have the same story, but tell me what should they be looking for to find a really, truly authentic Italian restaurant?
Travelers going
Yeah.
to Italy.
Yeah.
Okay, so my rule of thumb is that if the closer a restaurant is to a major tourist destination, the higher the probability it is a tourist trap.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's red flag number one. I like to tell people to get lost when they're walking around Rome or Milan or Florence or whatever it may be. Get
Hmm.
lost and eat in a smaller trattoria slash osteria type
Yeah.
of restaurant. Those, in my opinion, are the best types that you could eat. Why trattoria or osteria? Because you're getting, local dishes. Typically, they're family owned. Typically, the service tends to be more familiar, more friendly.
Yeah.
The owner will come up and talk to you,
Yeah.
and it just makes you feel like you're at home. And
And not
ex-
fancy at all. Usually there's chips
exactly,
on the plates, maybe not
exactly,
the cleanest place. There's dust on the wine bottles on the shelf. I mean,
yes.
it's one of these home places. And you know what I always notice about these small trattoria, which I love. I love them. And
Hmm.
that's really where we eat all the time, is that the servers are old.
Yes,
It's usually a
and
really good tip off. Yeah, they've been there
that's a
forever. It's
good
part of the
point.
family. Yeah, they're old.
That's a really good point. Yes, they tend to be a little older, which means that maybe they've been there for a while. Maybe it's their family business, and
Hmm.
and they're doing it because of passion, because they love it,
Yeah, yeah.
and that plays a major role in service, but also in the production of that dish, in the creation of that dish.
Yeah. And it's also very local when it's like that. When you have a
Yes,
family business like that, a small place, it's very
yes,
local. There's some and they're hard to find because, as a tourist, I think you're a little nervous to go outside. You just don't know where to go or what to walk into. And some of those little places can be a little intimidating because they're packed with locals who, are
yes.
very vocal and Italians are very social. So it can be a little bit intimidating for some
It is.
foreigners to go in there, but try to break in and not break in, but
Not yet.
just break right in and eat the food. But
Break through
try
the
to
barrier.
break through the barrier and go in and give it a try because it makes a difference. Is
Exactly.
is there any sign in foreign restaurants, let's say in New York or something, that you can tell whether or not they're using real food or do they even care?
So what I specifically look for when looking for a real Italian restaurant outside of Italy, I always find the menu online, and I look to see if there are any spelling errors. That's a huge pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Spelling errors, because it tells me that either A, there are no Italians that work there, so they didn't correct anything, or
Mhm.
B, there was no attention to detail. So spelling errors. Once it passes a spelling error test in Italian, of course, and if you don't speak Italian, I guess you'll have to skip that
Yeah.
or ask someone.
Yeah.
Then I look for the order of operations, I call it. So typically, as you know, meals or menus are structured first with the antipasto,
Hmm.
then the primo piatto, so the
Hmm.
first course,
First
then the
plant.
secondo piatto, contorni after the second course, and there are the contorni, the side dish, and then you have dolci.
Mhm.
So the order of operations. And once I see that, I see good spelling, I see order of operations is correct. Then I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a try. I'll give it a
Right.
try. And that's actually how I found my favorite restaurant in New Jersey. Literally the only Italian restaurant in Jersey that I'll go to. It's located in South Jersey. I'm going to give it a shout out if you don't mind.
Go ahead. You go right ahead.
It's called Sapori. Franco is a great guy. He's from Sicily and he makes fantastic dishes. Um,
Sicilian. Good.
Sicilian, yes, yes. But he does everything, and he's been there for over 20 years, so it's amazing.
Nice.
Um, Yeah, everything's great. In fact, on his menu, it's funny if you turn it on around on the back, he has a bunch of rules and explains, why you can't have cappuccino after dinner, or just specific why you shouldn't put strips of chicken on top of pasta,
I was
or
going to
why.
say, yeah, why chicken does not
Yes,
belong on pasta. Yeah, which
yes. So
is,
he tries to educate as well. When I saw that, I said, these are all green flags, green, green, green. So
oh, I like it. Green flags. That's perfect.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. So finally, let's just, for someone who is thinking of maybe just starting their journey into understanding real Italian food, this might be, completely eye opening for a lot of people. I think it probably will be. What's the first thing that you recommend that they do to start learning more and improving, their ability to spot a real product against
Oh,
a fake one?
the first thing that they should do to find a real product is to take their time and read the fine print. I know sometimes we're in a rush when we food shop. We want to get in, we want to get out and just buy whatever is easier, whatever is cheaper. But if you really want to get the real deal, you have to read the fine print, because unfortunately in North America, that's what we have to do. We have to sit there and
Mhm.
read everything, because we don't have really these regulations that exist, for example, in Italy, or when it comes to country of origin labeling, we have less regulation here, so it's more difficult to find exactly what we're looking for.
Mm.
So step number one is to take your time and read. Um, if you're in a rush and you want to look quickly, you could look for the red and yellow PDO logo. But I
Mhm.
should say that the red and yellow PDO logo doesn't mean it's Italian. It just means that that product is linked to a specific geographical area. It could be a French product, it could be a Spanish product, or a Greek product.
Okay.
Doesn't mean just Italian. But it does mean theoretically that it is a strictly produced product, done in the correct way, and you're getting the real deal of whatever that is, whether it's
Okay.
Parmigiano Reggiano or Greek feta, for example.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a great place to start. Now, of course, to follow you on your Instagram as well as listen to your podcast, because you have some really, really good information. And I think on your website as well, you have a few articles there too. You have a blog that
Yes,
talks a bit about it as well.
correct. Yes, yes. So I'll start with Instagram. Stop Italian Sounding is the name of the page. So you could just type in Stop Italian Sounding and it should come up.
Hmm.
Then there is that's also, by the way, on TikTok. It's on YouTube, Facebook, on all the social media channels.
Right.
Instagram, I tend to be a little more active on. It's more engaging.
Hmm.
Then there's my website, which is stopitasounding.com. So stopitasounding.com.
Hmm.
And then there's also the podcast, which is also very fun to run.
Yeah.
It's called Uncovering Authentic Italian Food. Could be found again on my website. Could also be found on the Sentire Media website as well.
Yeah.
And that's fun, because I like to have guests on and just speak about Italian food, speak about something that's passionate for us. And we offer insight through industry professionals, whether they're chefs or whether they're, they work with a specific company, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be, something that could bring you value. And
I
that's what
love
the
it.
podcast offers.
Yeah, it's a great podcast, everyone. And I will put the link in the show notes here so you can have a listen yourself and follow along. All right,
Thank you.
Robert. Well, as always, food is great conversation and always good conversation with you too.
Yes.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming on. I've had a great time.
I appreciate it. I also had a great time as well. Thank you very much.
Well, that was a fantastic conversation with Robert. I'm hungry, actually. I don't know about you, but I think it's time to go eat. Well, and I hope that this episode has inspired you to look a little bit more closely at the food you're buying and eating. Whether you're at the grocery store or sitting down at a restaurant, Italian food is more than just a meal. It's a connection to a culture and a tradition and a way of life. And understanding how to spot the real thing will make your experience that much richer. So to recap, whether you're picking out olive oil, ordering pasta, or searching for a restaurant, just keep an eye out for those red flags that Robert mentioned. Authentic Italian food is all about simplicity, quality ingredients, and staying true to regional traditions. And the more you learn, the more that you will appreciate the real flavors of Italy. It's time for listener questions. Just like the old radio call-in shows, my team has picked 3 listener questions, all left on our voicemail. I have no idea what these questions are, but I haven't been stumped yet. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Hi, Samantha. Quick question. So I've heard about some tax breaks for people renovating their homes in Italy, as well as the super bonus for more of an eco-sustainable focus. Who would I talk to learn more about this? Would any commercialista be fine, or is there more of a specialist for this?
Well, this is a really great question because some of you may remember that there was this incredible 110% tax credit that the government was giving for renovations a few years ago, but that isn't around anymore. So the ones that are now, there's always some sort of renovation bonus tax credit in Italy. And the good news is that this new budget in 2025, they have actually renewed the 50% renovation bonus. So what this means is that you can get up to, I think it's about 90 or 96,000 euros is your allowance. And any renovations that you do on your first house, your prima casa, you can get up to 50% back in tax credits. So this doesn't mean that you can take the discount off the invoice when you buy the renovation or buy the item, but it means that if you do the proper paperwork, and trust me, there's a lot of paperwork that you need to do, but if you do it correctly, then over 10 years, you can reap the benefits of 50% off. So I'll give you an example. If let's say you do 50,000 euros in work, you can deduct 25,000 euros of tax credit. But this deduction is in equal installments over 10 years. So every year you would take 2,500 euros as a tax credit against your taxes. Now, there's other kinds of bonuses out there for renovation as well. There is a furniture bonus, and I think this is for appliances or any furnishings, again, in a new home, and I think this is up to about 8,000 in tax credits. So if you're wise and you have a good commercialista and a good architect, then you should sit together and go through the potential bonuses that you might have and plan in advance, because these, of course, have to be well documented in order to get your tax credit. You cannot pay cash for items. You have to do it all through bank transfer so they can trace the money. And there also has to be a pre-declaration called a CIL that needs to go into the municipality beforehand so that they can be prepared, or you can actually prove the work was done. But overall, if you are planning on a renovation, it is your first home, then these are some really great tax credits to take advantage of.
Hi, my name is Lucille Conti. I am seeking citizenship in Italy. I have most of the documentation and I'm getting it apostilled. I can tell you a little bit about myself. My mother was from Italy. She was born in Vicenza, Tese Arzignano. And she became naturalized to the U.S. in 1973. I was born in 1966, so that makes me eligible. I am in the process of getting her naturalization paperwork from the U.S. CIS. I have her birth certificate. I have her marriage certificate, marriage license, and application. I have her oath and petition. I have my birth certificate and my marriage license and my husband's birth certificate, and my husband passed away. I have his death certificate. And I have a lot more paperwork that I probably need.
Hi, Lucille. Thanks for the message. And I'm sorry, I have some bad news for you. Based on what you've just described, unfortunately, this new change in citizenship rules will impact you. And October the 3rd, the Ministry of Interior decided that when an Italian ancestor, for in this case your mother, when she naturalized while you were still a minor under the age of 21, then she essentially broke the line. She scooped you up in the naturalization, meaning that you can no longer apply for your citizenship through jus sanguinis. And because it was your mother and because of the age that you were born, it's likely there is no other pathway unless you maybe have grandparents. You can't skip her, by the way. You can't go past her to your grandparents. But maybe on your dad's side, perhaps there might have been some Italian citizenship. Otherwise, the only other way for you to get your citizenship now is if you find a visa, move to Italy and live here for 3 years. then you can apply for citizenship through naturalization after 3 years. It's a little faster than normal. Normal, it's 10 years. But if your mother naturalized breaking the line, you only have to wait 3 years. So I'm really sorry about that news. And I know you've collected a lot of documents, and unfortunately, this will impact you.
Hi, Samantha. This is Julie. I have a two-part question. I am a dual U.S. Italian citizen, and my husband and I are considering purchasing a second home in Italy where we would like to spend about 4 or 5 months out of the year. My husband is not a dual citizen, so part one of my question is, how long can he legally remain in Italy without establishing residency? Second part of my question is there a possibility of us ever being able to purchase a car and be insured? And how long can we drive on our U.S. Driver's license without establishing residency? Thanks so much.
Hi, Julie. Congratulations on your idea, at least, to buy a house in Italy. Italy's a great place to own a home. And of course, you come back and forth on vacation as much as you like. You, as an Italian citizen, there's no restrictions for you, so you can come and go and stay as long as you like. Now, your husband, on the other hand, because he is not an Italian citizen and because you do not have residency here in Italy, so you're not an Italian resident, he will then be still restricted to the 90 days out of a 180-day period. So he still will only be able to come for those durations, 90 out of 180, but you, on the other hand, can come as much as you want. Now, the only way that that can change is if you move to Italy, you, the Italian, and you establish residency in your home, then your husband can also join you, apply for a permesso di soggiorno, and stay with you as long as he likes. Well, that's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about visas, citizenship, property, and, well, really anything about moving to Italy that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode, please feel free to send us a voicemail at our website at smartmoveitaly.com/podcast, or just click on the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, you can find all of the resources and the links to the people and the places that I mentioned in this episode inside the show notes. Ciao for now. A New Life in Italy podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created and hosted by me, Samantha Wilson. Production by London Nero, and with special thanks to Ali Frothingham, Sofia Pisana, and the entire team at Sentire. Follow A New Life in Italy wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you're thinking of moving to Italy, whether full-time, part-time, or for a lifetime, come and see me over at smartmoveitaly.com, and we'll help you get here and start living your best life. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate and leave a review. It's much appreciated. I can't wait to meet up with you again next week, same time, same place. Ciao for now.
Sentire Media.
Well, hello there, podcast listeners. Quick heads up before we get started on the show today. For anyone dreaming of retiring to Italy, my live elective residency visa workshop is back, and it's better than ever. I'm going live on April the 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. But don't stress if you can't make it live, because there is always a replay. Now, this workshop is invaluable and has helped hundreds of people nail their elective residency visa application. And considering how tricky getting this visa has become and all of the myths floating around, this 90-minute session with a live Q&A with me really is your ticket to clarity. I'm going to be diving into everything you need to know: what the ERV is, assembling your documents, and proving your financial viability, plus a whole lot more. You will also have access to my ERV workbook, which is full of templates and tips that has really helped a lot of my clients succeed. In fact, at a recent consulate appointment, a client just wrote saying they said it could take 90 days, but when they saw that our application packet was based on your workbook, they just smiled and said, "Come back next week." So yes, my success rate is 100%, and this workshop will be the best investment for your visa prep. Remember, I only do this 2 times a year, so if you're eyeing Italy in the next 12 months, now is the time to get in. Grab your spot. It's only $67. You're saving $30 if you register before April the 2nd, and spots are going fast, so don't wait too long. If you want some more information, visit us at smartmoveitaly.com/ERV Live. I hope to see you there. Now, on with the show.